US Bank Stadium opened in Minneapolis on July 22, 2016, at a total cost of approximately $1.13 billion, with Minnesota taxpayers and the city of Minneapolis contributing approximately $498 million of that, the state of Minnesota contributing approximately $348 million through stadium financing bonds, and the Minnesota Vikings organization contributing approximately $477 million. And within months of its opening, the roof failed under Minneapolis snow. Not a catastrophic structural collapse, a partial failure. The ETFE membrane roof panels, whose translucent material had been selected specifically because it was lighter, more transparent, and more visually dramatic than a conventional roof, deflected under accumulated snow load in ways that caused sections to buckle and required emergency remediation before the building's second winter season. The roof failure is not the forensic subject of this episode, though it is its opening image. The forensic subject is the financing structure, the specific mechanism by which the NFL's relocation threat, the Vikings were publicly entertaining Las Vegas and other markets as alternative locations, converted Minnesota's political calculus from should the public fund a private sports franchise's stadium into can we afford to let the Vikings leave, and extracted approximately $846 million in combined public investment for a stadium whose economic impact projections were produced by a consultant retained by the team. That number, $846 million in public money, is not the largest public stadium contribution in American sports history, but it is one of the most thoroughly documented because the Minnesota legislature's debate over the stadium financing produced an unusual volume of public record about the political mechanism by which franchise relocation threats are converted into public subsidy obligations. The roof that buckled under Minneapolis snow was an engineering problem with an engineering solution. The financing structure that committed $846 million of public money to a private NFL franchise was a political problem whose solution was never actually debated, because the question the Minnesota legislature answered was not whether the public should fund the stadium, but whether the public could afford to lose the team. Subscribe now, because that question is being asked in every American city with a professional sports franchise right now, and the answer the Minnesota legislature gave in 2012 is the answer most legislatures give. The Minnesota Vikings stadium financing negotiation between 2010 and 2012 proceeded through the specific political sequence that this channel's case file 076 documented in the Carolina Panthers context. The franchise publicly communicates its willingness to relocate. The competing jurisdictions respond by offering subsidies, and the home jurisdiction faces the political calculation of whether losing the team is more costly than funding the building. The Vikings' relocation threat had specific credibility that elevated its leverage above the standard franchise relocation negotiation. The Los Angeles market, which had been without an NFL franchise since 1994, was actively courting multiple NFL teams, and the NFL had explicitly identified Los Angeles as a priority relocation destination. The threat was not hypothetical. The Vikings hired Populous, the stadium design firm, to produce designs for a Los Angeles stadium before the Minnesota deal was finalized. The rendering was shown to Minnesota legislators. The political message was unmistakable. We have a specific alternative, and we are prepared to execute it. The Minnesota legislature's response to this specific, credible relocation threat was the May 2012 passage of a stadium financing bill that committed the state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis to a combined public contribution of approximately $846 million, the largest combined state and city contribution to an NFL stadium in the league's history at the time. The economic impact study that supported the public investment was produced by Convention Sports and Leisure International, a consultant with extensive experience producing economic impact analyses for professional sports facilities. The study projected significant job creation, tax revenue generation, and economic activity attributable to the stadium's presence. The academic literature on professional sports stadium economic impact, documented in this channel's case file 097, consistently finds that these projections overstate actual outcomes by 2 to 4 times. The Minnesota Stadium's economic impact projections have not been the subject of independent post-opening validation that would allow direct comparison to the projections, which is itself a forensically significant data point. The ETFE membrane roof that produced the 2017 snow load failure was selected for U.S. Bank Stadium through a design process that prioritized visual impact and structural lightness over performance in Minneapolis's specific winter weather environment, a selection that reflected the design team's confidence in the materials engineering solutions for snow management, and that was validated by the stadium's performance in its first winter season before the 2017 failure documented the confidence's limits. ETFE, ethylene tetrafluoroethylene, is a fluoropolymer film material that has been used successfully in stadium and arena roofing applications in multiple climates, including demanding winter environments. Its application at U.S. Bank Stadium was the largest ETFE roof installation in the United States at the time of the stadium's opening. The 2017 snow load failure produced approximately $4.7 million in remediation costs and generated extensive media coverage that created a specific reputational challenge for the stadium. A building whose primary architectural feature, its translucent roof, had failed in the weather conditions most associated with its host city. The engineering remediation involved modifications to the ETFE panel anchoring system and the addition of heating elements designed to prevent snow accumulation at the points where the 2017 deflection had occurred. The modifications were implemented before the 2017-18 winter season, and the roof has performed within specifications since. The roof failure was an engineering problem. The $4.7 million remediation cost was absorbed by the construction contractor under the project's warranty provisions. The Vikings did not pay for it, the public did not pay for it, the contractor did. What the roof failure documented, beyond its specific engineering cause, was the design process's insufficient attention to the specific performance requirements of a climate whose winter conditions were the most predictable feature of the site's location. Minneapolis gets approximately 54 inches of snow per year. The stadium was designed to be built in Minneapolis. The roof's performance in Minneapolis snow was not adequately stress-tested before the material selection was finalized. The ongoing financial structure of U.S. Bank Stadium's operation reflects the specific obligation that the $846 million public contribution created, a 25-year lease between the Vikings and the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority, the public entity that owns the stadium, under which the Vikings pay approximately $13 million per year in rent, representing a return on the public's $846 million investment of approximately 1.5% per year before accounting for debt service on the stadium financing bonds. The Vikings' $13 million annual rent payment represents approximately 1.1% of the team's estimated current market value of approximately $5.1 billion. The public's $846 million contribution financed approximately 75% of a building that the team leases for an amount whose relationship to the team's market value would be unacceptable in any conventional commercial real estate lease negotiation. The conventional commercial real estate lease structure requires annual rent payments that reflect the underlying asset's value, typically 6 to 10% of the asset's cost in a net lease structure. The Vikings' $13 million annual payment on a stadium that cost $113 billion to build represents a lease payment of approximately 1.2% of total project cost, approximately 5 to 8 times below the conventional commercial real estate benchmark. The difference between what the Vikings pay and what a commercial real estate tenant would pay for comparable space represents the specific public subsidy that flows from the lease structure every year for 25 years, approximately $50 to $65 million per year in below-market occupancy cost, multiplied by 25 years, producing a cumulative implicit subsidy that substantially exceeds the explicit $846 million construction contribution. The Minnesota Vikings Stadium case reveals in the context of this channel's 108 case archive the specific financial instrument that professional sports stadium public financing represents. not a civic investment with a financial return, but a retention payment for a private entertainment franchise whose departure is judged to be politically more costly than the construction subsidy required to prevent it. The Marlins Park case, documented in Case File 059 and revisited in Case File 109 below, established that a retained franchise can be sold for double its pre-stadium value within 5 years of the public subsidy's completion, with the appreciation accruing entirely to the private owner. The Minnesota Vikings have not been sold since the stadium's completion, but the team's market value has approximately doubled since the stadium opened, from approximately $2.4 billion in 2016 to approximately $5.1 billion currently. The public contributed $846 million to a building that the franchise occupies at below market rates. The franchise's market value has increased by approximately $2.7 billion since the building opened. The public has received none of the appreciation. The snow fell on the roof the engineers said would hold it. Some of it did not hold. The engineers fixed the roof. Nobody is fixing the financing structure. This content was developed using artificial intelligence tools as part of the research, writing, and production process. All AI-generated material was subject to human review, editorial intervention, and approval before publication.